I'm Tony Pearson, one of the partners and surveyors here at Sussex Surveyors. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how the Party Wall Act relates to you if you're planning to do building works on your property. Under the Act, this makes you what's referred to as the building owner, as opposed to your neighbours who will be the adjoining owners. Now, the way the Act works, first thing to do is to look at sections 1, 2 and 6 of the Act and see if any of the work you're planning to do is listed. If it is, then you have what's referred to as notifiable work and you need to serve notices on your neighbours. My advice at this point is go and talk to your neighbours. I often hear people say, oh, they served notices on me, they didn't even have the courtesy of coming and talking to me about them, so sod them, I'm going to make their life difficult. By going and having a quick chat with your neighbours, I find it often makes your life easier and saves you money in the long run. You're now ready to serve your notices, and you can do this yourself. There's lots of templates available on the internet. However, I often see notices served that are invalid for technical reasons. People often don't include an acknowledgement, relying on the neighbour verbally telling them that it's fine and go ahead, which then gets withdrawn when things go wrong later. Or similarly, I've also heard of stories of people who sign an acknowledgement but say, I didn't know what it was I was signing, I didn't really understand it, when it all goes wrong later. In November 2017, my fees for serving the notices for you is £100 plus VAT. So for £120, you get the notices served correctly. There's an acknowledgement included for the adjoining owner to fill in. There's also an explanatory letter outlining everything that's happening. I often find that when adjoining owners can see that everything's being done by the book with a party wall surveyor involved, they're more inclined to consent to the works, making your life easier and saving you money in the long run. So now looking at sections 1, 2 and 6 of the Act, starting with section 1 with a straight cut and paste from the Act, you can see that this section applies where lands of different owners adjoin and are not built on at the moment, but one of the parties is wanting to build an extension. So a typical example here would be a ground floor extension to a terraced house or a semi-detached property, or perhaps even a side extension to a detached property. So under the Act, if the adjoining owner agrees, this is the way the wall or side wall of the new extension can be built. You'll see how the vertical dotted line is the line of junction, and the wall is built straddling that line of junction with the new extension of the building owners on the right hand side. Now you might look at this and think, why is the adjoining owner going to agree to that? They're going to lose a little bit of land, they've got disruption during the period of the works. Well, I would suggest, why not? When you look at this photo, you can see how these two people have built extensions at different times, creating a gap between them, which now is filling up with debris, which can lead to problems with penetrating dampness and other maintenance issues in the long term. And they've both done themselves out of floor area by not building right up to the line of junction and taking advantage of the powers within the Act. If, however, though, the adjoining owner really doesn't allow the wall to be built across the line of junction, then you are entitled to build right up to the line of junction. And as you can see in this picture, the footings or foundation of the wall actually project across the line of junction. Now you are entitled to do that as long as it is necessary and as long as you pay compensation to the adjoining owner for the inconvenience caused by having those footings project across. In my experience though, it's not necessary. With a simple redesign, you can have, as the wall is shown here in this slide, the footings stop against the line of junction, and this is usually easier to redesign your foundation in this way than it is to try and calculate the cost of compensation that should be payable. Finally, you'll notice how it's a completely blank wall that's facing onto the adjoining owner's property. There's no roof overhang, there's no gutters, there's no boiler flues or kitchen or bathroom extractor fans. It is a completely blank wall, and that's what must be left, because one day the adjoining owner may decide that they want to build a similar extension, and they need to be able to do that without having anything projecting from the building owner's property onto their property. So that was section 1 of the Act. Now looking at section 2 of the Act, with a straight cut and paste from the Act, you can see this section applies when properties adjoin and they are built on. So this is your typical semi-detached house or a terraced property, and you want to do something to the dividing wall between those two properties. Section 2 of the Act applies. The way section 2 works, there's various works listed from subsections A to N. So if you're doing anything with the party wall, you work your way down through subsections A to N and see if anything that you're planning to do is listed. And I've just included a couple of examples there, B, F and G. In particular, F's a very common one as it relates to cutting into the party wall for any purpose. So a typical example of this would be a loft conversion, where you're going to have to insert steels into the party wall as part of the loft conversion. If you're planning to do anything to the wall, work your way through subsections A to N, and if anything applies, you need to serve a notice under section 2 of the Act. So now looking at section 6, with again a cut and paste from the Act. This section applies where a building owner proposes to excavate or excavate for and erect a building. As you can see, you don't even actually have to be building anything. Just by excavating, the work could become notifiable. So an example of this would be forming a swimming pool within the grounds of your detached property. You may need to serve a party wall notice for doing that. The section continues within a distance of 3 metres measured horizontally from any part of a building or structure of an adjoining owner, and B, which is a crucial point that often gets missed, any part of the proposed excavation will extend to a lower level than the bottom of the foundations of the adjoining owner's property. I often get phone calls from people saying my neighbour's excavating within 3 metres of mine and he hasn't served me with party wall notices. My first question is always, how deep are they going? Which usually is met with silence. You can excavate within 3 metres of your adjoining owner's property as long as you don't go to a depth lower than their foundations. So how do we know how deep the adjoining owner's foundations are? The answer is we don't usually, so we have to make a reasonable assessment. A good starting point, if your house is built at the same time as your neighbour's, dig a trial hole, see how deep your foundations are. If your foundations are 1.5 metres for instance, it's reasonable to assume that your neighbour's property will have a similar foundation depth. If you're only excavating say 1 metre for a conservatory or a ground floor extension and you're only excavating 1 metre, then you don't need to serve party wall notices. Alternatively, if the adjoining owner's property is a much older property, then it's likely that they will have much shallower foundations than yours. They could be as shallow as 0.5 metre to 1 metre, in which case you will have to serve party wall notices. You'll also note that section 6 includes the words building or structure. Structure is not actually defined within the Act and opinions are divided. My own opinion, which is supported by others, is a structure is anything that could be damaged by the works. So this could include a fence, a garden wall, a patio, a conservatory, a garden shed, anything at all that could be damaged when you excavate within 3 metres of it. So just because the adjoining owner's house is not located within the 3 metres, they may have some other structure on their property that means party wall notices do need to be served. My advice is always, if in doubt, serve the notices, because then you know that you've done everything by the book. Thanks for watching. I hope you found that interesting. In my next video, I outline the responses that you can expect from the neighbours in reply to the notice if you've served on them. These can be complicated and can have quite an impact on the amount of time it will take before you can progress your project. And if there's anything else that we can help you with, please don't hesitate to call.